Hello everybody, I am the Dire Duck. Murder Drones. It has a lot of characters, not just your random background characters that are only there to add to the body count, like Tim and Grant and Doll's dad. Even when you exclude all those kinds of characters, there's still a good amount left in the show. We of course have Uzi and N and a few other big names, though they're the only ones that really get a lot of focus. There is a large pool of characters that the show acts like are important, but functionally they do very little. This is because the show spreads itself too thin to realistically give them all the time needed to make them matter. And what time the show does have, it mostly spends on N and especially on Uzi. So that opens up an interesting question. Which side character has the most untapped potential, and also, which side character got screwed over the hardest by the show itself? That is what I aim to answer today. I will go over each of our side characters, what potential they had in the story, and how much the show ends up wasting them. I'll even put them on a nice little tier list for you all, because I know how much you would all like that. Now, first things first, let me actually define what characters I'm referring to here. I am looking for side characters that have a decent presence in the show, and are built up to be relatively significant players within the story, whether due to their lore significance and build up, or their higher screen time when compared to other characters. Going off of this basis, the characters I will be considering are Lizzy, Fad, Nori, Khan, Jay, Tessa, Doll, Alice, and Yeva. Everyone else either doesn't have enough of a role in the story, or is clearly just one note enough for me just to not bother analysing for this video.
That's my boy. No, my boy! Father, help!
Or, of course, they're literally one of the main characters, and get a good amount of focus. If this video does well, maybe I can go over some of the other characters that I've not included here, but for now, this is your roster. So, first up we have Lizzy. Now, Lizzy's role in the show is one that is actually able to somewhat evolve along with the show itself. Something that, as you will see later on, is not always the case. In the pilot, her main role is to be the popular mean girl archetype that bullies Uzi and is meant to help demonstrate Uzi's isolation for the rest of the colony, showing her how she doesn't fit in. After the pilot, she mainly occupies the role of comic relief.
That girl is gorgeous, right? I'm gonna let her in.
But she does have other uses in the plot. She first serves as a tool for Doll and a way for the episode 3 plot to happen. While not a very impressive role, she does fulfill it. But after that, her secondary use is to be a vehicle to show V's development and growth throughout the series. Lizzy is what enables V to somewhat come out of her shell and gives us someone else to talk to that isn't Uzi or N. She performs this role about as well as could be reasonably expected from her, given the fact that she's still mostly a background element in the story. In terms of untapped potential, it is really only her relationship with V and to a lesser extent Doll that would have been good to see expanded a bit more. Otherwise, she's just comic relief, and in that role, she does very well. Therefore, I wouldn't say she was really screwed over by the show. She does what she needs to do in the story, and while it could have been nice to get a bit more from her, considering how rushed the show is generally, Lizzy comes off better than most characters. After all, she's one of only a handful of characters that is able to develop beyond the slice of life framework that she was originally built for. Unlike other characters that fail to adapt with the shift in the show's focus, Lizzy is able to continue developing despite this. So with that, I will place Lizzy in the no issues tier. Next up we have Fad. Now, Fad is interesting to compare to Lizzy. He starts off about the same as her in terms of plot usage, but unlike Lizzy, Fad's role really does not adapt with the show's change in focus. He first serves as a potential love interest for Uzi, and the one helpful worker drone that is willing to assist her, but all that ends pretty damn quickly once N enters the picture. And the thing is, the show basically stops caring about the colony after episode 4, and even before then, Fad does literally nothing beyond episode 2. I mean, he does show up in episodes 7 and 8, but does nothing of any lasting consequence. And frankly, he only seems to be there in the first place because they wanted to bring all the named characters back together for the finale. Fad's role in the story just disappears, much like Fad himself actually, and the show doesn't really know what else to do with him. Did Fad really have any potential in the version of the story the show ended up telling? Well, he could have been a more active supporter of Uzi, encouraging her to find out more about what's going on, and just generally being a supportive friend. Failing that, the show could have just had him die in episode 3 or 4 to give some actual emotional stakes and meaning to those episodes to ensure that it's not just random worker drones we don't care about that are dying. Instead, someone we actually know, at least somewhat care about. He could have also tried working with Khan a lot more in the show plot, or become N's equivalent to Lizzy, but in that latter instance, he would always be fighting for screen time against Uzi. And let's be real, he's never going to win that battle. Fad simply seems to be a relic, one that the show tried to forget about. and for that, I'm going to put him in badly utilized. The show most certainly screwed him over, and they couldn't even be bothered to give him a cool death scene to clean remove him from the board. Instead, he sits around in limbo doing nothing for the whole series. Following Fad, we have Khan.
Oh, Jesus.
Now, tell me if you're noticing a pattern here, but he's a character that gets a lot of focus at the beginning of the show's story, but doesn't do a right lot after the end of the pilot. Though, fortunately for Khan, he has it a lot better than most other characters in the show.
You would have it.
Neat.
Khan's main role at the start of the show is to serve as a minor obstacle for Uzi and represent the colony's stagnant attitude, along with showing us why Uzi is the way she is. He ends up leaving Uzi to die and help get the plot going. He then has a minor role throughout the rest of the series, being present but not really doing very much. Now, that's just fine for a side character, but the thing with Khan is that 1, he was set up to have a lot more going for him, and 2, he has so many missed opportunities. Khan tried to go through a redemption arc, trying to be a better father and leader, and while he does seem to achieve both of these goals, we don't really see any of it on screen, apart from little moments here and there. That would have been okay if it weren't for the fact that we never got a public resolution, no apology from him or acceptance from Uzi. We don't even see him properly react to his long dead wife still being alive. Khan is a character that got screwed over, not because he didn't have a role or arc in the story, but because we never got a proper conclusion to said arc. For that, he's going in questionable usage. We will now go with everyone's favourite corporate bootlicker, Jay. So, what does Jay do in the series? Well, she starts off as the main antagonist and represents the JC Jensen Corporation, but that all turns out to be bunk, so we can't really count that. Beyond that, what does she amount to? Well, not really much else. She is fairly inactive after the pilot, apart from being another pair of hands for Sin, and getting her ass kicked in the final battle. What's strange though is that the show doesn't treat her like that. Instead, it builds her up and teases her having a larger purpose in the story. A purpose that we never end up seeing. She just sticks with Sin and gets defeated. She's barely even present in that final battle, being dispatched without much fuss. We could have seen so much more from her. For example, we could have seen more about her relationship with Tessa, showing how the influence of Solver affected them, making Jay a much more sympathetic character. Hell, we could have even had a full-on redemption arc, but we got none of that. If she had just stayed dead after the pilot, then all this would have been fine. But as it stands, she was brought back and set up for something more, but ultimately amounted to nothing. So for that, she has to go and badly utilized. Who could follow Jay but the other character that was built up a lot? Doll. She's another character that seemed like she was going to be a big deal, but what did she really amount to in the end? After episode 3, she's basically a background element, used only to push the plot forward and not much else. For such a lore-significant character, the show didn't seem prepared to give her the time she needed to be fully fleshed out. While she did get a lot more attention than some other characters we'll be discussing, Doll also probably had the most hype out of all of these characters. So I think it's fair to expect a bit more from her than we actually got. As, when you boil it down, all Doll achieves in the story is being the dark reflection of Uzi. And while she does succeed in that role, frankly, she could have and should have been a lot more than that. So I feel like Doll needs to go into the what were they thinking tier, because as it stands, they could have literally cut Doll out of the show and not a lot would have really changed. All you'd have to do is shuffle a few scenes around, change a few characters here and there, and Doll could be easily removed from the show. And considering how much screen time she actually took up relative to other characters, that's quite embarrassing. Next up, we have the only human in the series really worth talking about, that being Tessa. She's an interesting one, as we see her all throughout the series. Starting in episode 3, we then next get her backstory and motivations in episode 5. She then tells N about how they need to save the world from the Solver in episode 6. She posits N a difficult moral choice, and oh yeah, none of that was actually Tessa. So in actuality, as I'm sure you all already know, the only time we actually see Tessa for real is in episode 5. There, she is a fun character, helping develop N and J a little bit, but she mostly exists in order to set up the Tessin twist. In that respect, I guess she does a good job at least, though she could have done so much more. But at the same time, the Tessin twist would have needed to have not happened to make it possible. So for Tessa's ranking, it really just comes down to whether or not you like the twist or not. I myself think the twist is perfectly fine, so I'm going to put her in service of their purpose. She could have done a little bit more in the story, but as she stands, she does her one role pretty well. Finally, we have the Cavern Fever trio, Yeva, Nori, and Alice. We will first start with Yeva. Now, what is there really to say? She shows up in one flashback and then dies off screen? She does manage to patch Nori and free them from the Solver's control, but that's about it. Despite beating the Solver, she's then later taken out by V of all people, which seems a bit odd in terms of power scaling. She's really just a plot device and nothing more. Did she have more potential in the story? I guess? But she equally could have just not appeared at all. This makes things difficult to judge. She could have come back like Nori, but, well, we'll talk about that when we get to Nori. At the end of the day, she serves her purpose. And while there could have been more, I personally don't care for Yeva. Like, the only reason why she even managed to sneak her way onto this list to begin with is due to her lore significance. So, I'm just going to leave her in the serves their purpose tier, as frankly, they probably shouldn't have done anything more with her. Now we have Alice. She is similar in almost every way to Yeva, only critically, she is a lot more interesting to watch on screen. She is basically just another minor antagonist that gives Nori a bit more lore, and that's about it. They threaten the cast and not much else. Just like Yeva, she could have been cut from the show and her role in episode 6 replaced by Doll, which, let's be honest, would have made a lot more sense. It would have actually given Doll a chance to be an actual threat again. There is not much more to say really. She does what she needs to do in the story and does it quite well, but that role was kind of unneeded. So, I guess she serves her purpose, but there is not much more that can be done. She just, again, serves her purpose, and then dies. Pretty unceremoniously, actually. Last up, we have Nori. Oh, Nori. A character that manages to be such a waste of potential, with her basically doing nothing in the whole show apart from being a parrot for N in one fight. And I guess showing us how the patch works, by demonstrating on herself. Even then, the patch ends up being useless in the plot anyway, so that doesn't really amount to much. But not only that, her existence in the plot itself actively harms it. Her being alive undoes a lot of the stakes and mystery surrounding her fate. And even when she is revived, her character is just so meh. She only really has lore value and not much else. I don't know, I could go on a long rant about Nori, but she's a character that basically should have just stayed dead. And what makes it so much worse is that the show failed to use her for the things that she could have been used for after she was revived. Like, as mentioned before, we never get to see Khan and Nori have any moments together, or really any reaction upon seeing each other at all. Well, any reaction that isn't just a stupid joke, of course.
Kinda hot?
She's the only character in the entire show where I feel like her presence in the show actively harms it. So, with that in mind, she has to go in the what were they thinking tier, as frankly, the show would have been better off if she stayed dead. Bringing her back was frankly a terrible idea, especially if they weren't going to commit the time to actually make her coming back mean something important. That's the last of them. Now, what have we actually learned from all this? Well, most of the MD side characters are a mixed bag. A lot of them suffer from misuse, lack of screen time, missed potential, or any combination of the three. Some clearly came off better than others, though even with the ones that were used well, they still had a lot of missed potential. But I suppose that is the nature of side characters, they're not meant to be the focus of the story. But even so, most of them still feel quite hollow, like they were half-baked and or rushed. Whatever rewrites or cuts to the story that there may have been, it is very clear that the side characters were most certainly the primary victims of it. What is strange though, is that characters like Nori and Alice didn't have to be in the show to begin with. They either shouldn't have been present in the story whatsoever, or their role could have easily been replaced by another character, who also needed screen time. Overall, the treatment of the show's side characters functions as a nice microcosm of the show's wider issues. Rushed development, lack of explanation, and strange decisions being made. I have a feeling that a lot of the characters mentioned today, and a few others that were not, are only there because they had a cool idea in their heads that they didn't want to get rid of. They decided that something would be cool to see, put it in the show, without much thought to how it would affect the narrative as a whole. If that is the case, it really does show. It's the same for a lot of things about murder drones. Good idea, but never enough time to really flesh any of them out. Oh well, at least we have a long list of characters for fan series to play with. Right then, do you agree with my assessment or would you rate the characters differently? Let me know in the comment section below. Anyway, that'll be all from me. Remember to like and subscribe and do all the other things that every other YouTuber tells you to do. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, check out my other videos, some of which are even good. Maybe. Either way, I hope to see you all again very soon. Bye bye.